Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Otaku Dai-kun, a series dedicated to fandom of all things anime or anime-inspired. My name's Dai, and this episode is going to serve as a shout-out to what I consider to be the greatest JRPG battle systems ever made. These battle systems are in no particular order, and consist only of those games that I've actually played. If you have a favorite battle system that doesn't make this list, please share the love in the comments section below. A battle system is typically at the heart of all JRPGs, and its mechanics can expand exploration, story, town or shop elements, as well as the core fighting. The best battle systems tend to give players numerous ways to gain strength beyond just leveling up. That, or they provide such an addictive experience that the mechanics needn't be so complex. Let's jump right in then. Being one of the most beloved RPGs of all time, it's no wonder that Final Fantasy VII would also have one of the most satisfying battle systems out there. It uses the tried-and-true ATB gauge system, where your party members are able to take turns only after their ATB gauges fill. Enemies will continue to act while you're deciding what commands to choose, so it's important to think quickly as well as strategically about how to act. The commands issued to party members depend on their equipped abilities, but generally consist of a basic attack, magic, summoning, defense, and item usage. Everything present seems pretty traditional and straightforward, but what sets VII apart from other RPGs is its materia system. Basically, materia are shining, orb-like objects that you can equip to a character's weapon and accessory to grant them special effects or abilities. Equipping a fire materia, for instance, will allow the character to use an offensive spell, Fire, under the magic command in battle. Some materia grant magic spells, others permit epic summon spells, and others can greatly affect the rules of play. One such materia combination is Counter and Mime, which causes a character to repeat his or her last action whenever hit by an attack. When attached to a character's equipment, materia will gain experience and level up based on the equipment's growth rate, rewarding the player with access to higher level spells, reduced MP costs, or the ability to use a skill more often per battle. If you level a piece of materia to its maximum level, it will create a brand new level 1 duplicate of itself, allowing you to make more and more of the same materia with enough effort. The materia system, while easy to learn, can be an exciting challenge to master. It separates the novices from the pros, as leveling up is only part of your strength. Another flashier part of the battle system involves limit breaks. Your characters will fill individual limit gauges as they get hit by enemies. Once filled, characters can unleash special attacks of varying effect, such as Cloud's Omni Slash or Cid's High Wind. These limit attacks are character-specific, and can play in greatly to how you arrange your party. Definitely play this game if you love classic JRPGs and want something with a great deal of depth and strategy. Those who are familiar with traditional MMOs will likely find themselves at home with Xenoblade Chronicles X, at least during battles. You take control of a main protagonist of your creation, and encounter enemies on the same field you traverse and explore, along with up to 3 AI partners. Upon confronting a targeted enemy, your characters will automatically attack to deal damage over time, but your success in battle will depend on effective timing and use of special arts that you select from a list at the bottom of the screen. These arts all have specific cooldown times that prevent you from spamming them recklessly. Their uses range from melee and firearm attacks to buffs and heals. The weapons your characters can equip and which arts they use depend on which class they are and how much class experience they've accumulated. The classes also give you access to passive skills that can raise stats or have various conditional effects. There's a vast assortment of weapons and armor to equip, each making you prioritize which stats you most desire. Most of this equipment can be made to fit augments, items that alter individual stats such as evasion or attack strength. While you level up linearly by gaining experience points, the max level is capped at 60, leaving a plethora of strong enemies that need to be defeated by studying the mechanics and optimizing your party's gear and abilities. To add another layer of complexity to the battles, Xenoblade X allows you to pilot giant mechs called skells that can fight on ground and in air. There's quite a large number of different skell frames, armor, and weapons that can be swapped out independently. A skell's weapons determine its arts, meaning that you can equip powerful super weapons that deal tons of damage, or an array of weaker weapons to have a wider range of attacks. Post-game, nearly all of the best gear for on ground and in Skell is made by gathering various enemy drops that require battling a huge portion of the bestiary, keeping almost all enemies relevant. These mechanics offer countless hours of gameplay as players try various combinations of gear, augments, skills, and arts to make their ideal build. Play this game if you're the type who loves getting so strong you can take on a game's super bosses like they were nothing. If you haven't played them yet, games in the Tales franchise offer a lovely combination of RPG and fighting game mechanics that give it a fast-paced, real-time battle system that usually supports 4-player couch co-op. While there isn't a huge difference between any two games in the series, Tales of Grace's F tweaks the usual formula to really improve on its battle system. Generally speaking, you encounter enemies on the field and are taken to a battle area where you control one of 4 party members in a brawl against one or more opponents. You control your character by running toward or away from the enemy you've targeted, but you can also guard and sidestep. Each party member has 2 different kinds of attacks. For example, the protagonist Asbel can attack with basic sword combos with one button and attack using magic sword skills with another. It allows some characters, like Sharia, to serve as both an attacker and a healer, so that the party isn't so limited by individual character builds, and makes co-op that much more fun. Earlier entries in the series weren't as much fun for co-op, since being a healer or a mage aren't as appealing as using melee attacks. Perhaps the most important change that Grace's F made to the typical Tales formula is that none of these arts cost TP or tech points to use. Instead, any action you take, be it attacking, healing, or dodging, depletes your character's command points, which prevent you from acting once depleted, and require you to wait a moment before the points reset. This means that you can jump in and use whatever abilities you want, chaining them together in any order, while preventing you from infinitely spamming attacks. It's a simple design choice that drastically improves the pace and flexibility of combat. As an awesome cherry on top, your actions in battle will fill a limit gauge that can be used to perform a variety of mystic arts that are as powerful as they are flashy. Tales is the series to go for if you want addictive, high-velocity combat. The combat in Skies of Arcadia is fairly basic and slow-paced, using one of the most classic forms of turn-based combat around, but it more than makes up for it via its theme and artistry. You command a party of 4 sky pirates, and each turn, you select what all of your party members will do ahead of time. Once all your commands are issued, everyone acts one at a time based on their agility. It's a toss-up, really, as you never know for sure who's going to go first. And it's possible that the person you're trying to heal gets killed before you get to heal them, and the magic or item gets used on the wrong person and goes to waste. This lack of certainty can be both invigorating and frustrating. Unique to Skies of Arcadia is a shared special gauge that the entire party contributes to and consumes when performing special attacks. These attacks are character-specific and help dictate who winds up in your party. Aika, for example, has a special attack called Delta Shield that negates all enemy magic used on the party. It's very useful. Magic consumes a character's MP, and it can be fairly costly in the beginning, giving healing items and spellcasting items a lot more use than in other RPGs. The spells give you healing, elemental attacks, status effects, and most importantly, buffs that strengthen your attacks. As you learn your magic, you'll be able to select the color of your weapon based on the magical elements, which give your attacks and defenses elemental affinity. You switch these colors on the fly to adapt to each enemy you face. Later in the game, you'll get to use a full party special gauge to unleash one of 2 powerful team attacks. One involves your battle party uniting to form a single strike, while the other uses your entire pirate crew and has different effects based on who you recruit. The real gem of Skies, however, is the airship combat. You pilot large airships throughout the game that you can use in battle against large monsters or enemy ships. These battles still occur in waves, just like the ground battles, but involve some deeper mechanics. Before initiating the turn, you select 4 actions that include using weapons, magic, defense, or items. There are 3 different weapon types: main cannons, sub-cannons, and torpedoes. Main cannons fire on the turn you place them, whereas sub-cannons fire smaller bursts over a number of turns. Torpedoes are launched in advance and can land on a later turn. The key to battle is to plan your attacks so that all 3 cannons strike on the same turn when your enemy is at its weakest. You also get a powerful super weapon per airship that can only be used at predetermined opportunities. After some waves, you'll be prompted to make a key decision that will affect the next wave, such as charging head-on or trying to catch the enemy off guard. These can leave either you or the enemy vulnerable. While the mechanics don't go particularly deep, the emotional feel of the battles is so grand and adventurous that you'll always be entertained. Go for Skies of Arcadia if you're truly seeking an adventure. The Ys series is often seen as the underrated brother of The Legend of Zelda, focusing on a leveling system and a more adrenalized, arcade-style overhead approach to combat. The more modern entries in the franchise have really advanced the formula to include a 3-member party, special attacks, a plethora of equipment, and dashing rather than jumping. You fight enemies on the same field you explore, and attack in real time with basic attacks, charge attacks, or flashy special attacks that cost special points. Enemies are all either weak to slash, strike, or pierce attacks, so you'll be swapping between your party of 3 constantly to match your character's strengths to enemies' weaknesses. The more you use your special attacks, the more you unlock and the better they become. There's not a lot of depth to the system's progress and mechanics, but the sheer pace and excitement of the real-time combat is highly addictive. Play this if you want a higher element of player input and reaction-based skill in your RPGs. This game certainly has one of the most innovative battle systems out there. Essentially, it combines third-person shooting mechanics with a tactics engine to deliver strategic, military-oriented combat. You command a squad of fighters ranging from scouts, shock troopers, lancers, snipers, mechanics, and a tank as you fight against an opposing army while trying to take their main camp or accomplish other objectives. Each unit type has its own strengths and weaknesses. Scouts move faster and further per action, shock troopers are great at fighting ground troops, and lancers are adept at destroying enemy tanks. Like other tactics games, you and your opponents act in large waves, taking turns moving as many units as you can until you're out of commands. During your turn, you select a unit from an overview map at the expense of command points, and are taken to that character's position on the field. You can move them around the field freely, but doing so depletes an action gauge, so you can only move a short distance at a time. While doing so, enemies on the field will automatically fire at you, making it so you have to move quickly and make use of cover when available. Once per action, you can take aim at another unit and fire with your main weapon, dealing damage depending on whether your shot hits or if they strike critical areas such as a soldier's head. If your attack fails to kill its target, they will fire back at you, making you think twice about your assault. During an action, you can also use either a healing item or grenade to assist your unit. The tank costs more command points to use, but it's very useful at destroying armored targets, blasting wide areas with mortar strikes, and shielding your other troops. During an enemy's turn, if your units are defeated, they aren't immediately killed, as you can send medics for fallen soldiers during your turn. Failing to do so in a timely manner, however, will result in permadeath for the unit in question. Outside of battle, you level up your troops by their class type, which allows you to recruit whomever you wish into your squad. Specific characters do, however, have personality-based conditions that occur in battle, such as some characters having allergies or loving to charge right into enemy fire, and have buffs and debuffs to match, so squad lineup isn't completely arbitrary. There's also a streamlined system for developing and upgrading gear, and you can even equip weapons stolen from enemy captains during battle. There are some frustrations here and there, specifically regarding lancers having poor accuracy and missing even at point-blank range, or targets ducking to dodge your attacks far too often. But overall, it's a very well-made battle system. It's a must-play for any fan of tactics. Hear me out, as I'm the first to admit this is not a popular option. Final Fantasy XIII is often hated by critics for its linearity, convoluted yet unsubstantial plot, and mostly automatic battle system. People have claimed that you don't actually play the game in a traditional sense. However, anyone who's conquered the game's tough bosses knows that there's a surprising amount of depth that even I hadn't realized during my first playthrough. Imagine you're playing Final Fantasy VII or another ATB gauge system, but are one step removed. In 13, commanding an individual character's actions isn't as important as choosing the strategic trends of your entire party on the fly. From a corporate perspective, it's like being a manager rather than a supervisor. All of your characters have different roles, ranging from melee attacker, magic user, healer, defender, to caster of buffs and debuffs. You arrange your characters and their roles into different paradigms, which feels a lot like shouting battle strategies in the spur of the moment to react to different conditions. There is, ultimately, an ideal strategy to all battles. You use your paradigms to first apply buffs to your party, such as defense and speed augments, while applying debuffs to your enemies to weaken them. You then barrage your enemy with magic attacks they're weak to. Doing so will fill a target's break gauge. Once the gauge is completely filled, your enemy enters a weakened state. They take more damage and can be struck into the air for combo attacks. At this point, you go all out with a balance of melee and magic attacks to try and kill your target before their break state expires. You'll also implement healing and defensive roles as necessary. Only after having a winning combination of attack buffs, weakness debuffs, enemy break, and the right balance of magic to melee attacks can you tap into the insane amounts of damage needed to take down powerful foes. These mechanics can make the difference between a tough boss lasting a few minutes while being rather simple, and taking up to a half hour while being extremely frustrating. Some tricks I wish I knew during my first playthrough play a huge role but are poorly explained. Your selection of attacks, particularly magic ones, are automatically generated for your main character and 2 AI-controlled partners. As you uncover an enemy's weakness and resistance via items or repeated fights, those automatically generated attack chains will target that enemy's weak points. Also, the game has summons, but they're almost never as useful as the strategy I already pointed out. I used summons in only 1 or 2 battles during the entire game. Hilariously, this is one of the few games I know where poison is extremely useful on tough bosses. There's also a weapon upgrading system that basically allows you to make any weapon in the game into the ultimate weapon for your characters. Most of its mechanics, however, are a waste of time and money. There are tons of options, but only one correct way to do things, so it's a huge pain in the ass. So, much to my own surprise, I found this game's battle mechanics, with the exception of equipment and summons, to be far deeper and more rewarding than I initially gave it credit for. It's a shame so much else about the game is completely horrendous. Persona manages to take a really simple battle system and inject a ton of fun into it. It's standard turn-based fare, but your abilities and affinities are determined by equipped personae. Think of Pokemon, but instead of using creatures to fight for you, the personas you equip change your character's traits. A persona is a mask that one puts on to deal with others, and in the game's lore, you can gain power from them. Personae take the form of ancient gods and fictional characters, and there are tons of them. You can use basic weapon attacks, but you'll mostly make use of different magic spells or physical special attacks to exploit your enemy's weaknesses. Hit an enemy with a spell it's weak to, and you'll knock it down and get to take another turn. Manage to knock down all the enemies in battle, and you'll get to use a powerful, all-out attack that can usually end most normal fights on the spot. Persona 4 Golden, the expanded PS Vita release of the original PS2 game, adds special double-team attacks that are also quite entertaining. There are some buffs and ailments in the game, but they're not as useful as elemental exploits. A great deal of the game's depth comes from its narrative events. Personae fit into several classes based on tarot cards. The game gives you characters who you encounter as part of the story, and your relationships with them represent the strength of those persona classes. By spending time with these characters, you strengthen your class rank, which grants you bonuses when fusing persona. You can take different personae and fuse them to form new ones. The order and arrangement of fusions you make can affect the abilities your new persona will have. Expanding your collection of personae will grant you the strength to succeed in battle, and fighting with them will help you level them up, unlocking stronger attacks and abilities. It can be very rewarding. Go for Persona if you like dungeon crawling and crafting. This game has such a flashy battle system. It's a mix of real-time and turn-based systems, taking into account the time it takes for a character to act, such as moving to an opponent and attacking. What I mean is, you wait for your character's turn, then choose an action, then wait for the character to reach its target and attack, or charge up a special move. During this time, you can be struck by enemies, and they can even cancel your actions with a critical hit. You can do the same, anticipating enemy attacks and canceling them to prevent some serious damage. Grandia III takes it up a notch from its predecessors, as canceling an opponent sends them into the air and makes them more vulnerable to air combos. It's pretty awesome. I already mentioned it, but you can command your party members to use special attacks. The more you use them, the stronger they become, and the more you'll unlock. The game also has a satisfying magic system. Throughout your journey, you'll come across magic eggs, which you can equip to characters to strengthen a certain element, or consume them to teach characters new spells. Later on, you'll be able to fuse mana eggs to gain access to the strongest spells in the game, which are really intense and awesome. Grandia III has a fantastic battle system that's very technical. If you want an ideal balance between strategy and velocity, this is your game. Not exactly the best for last, but definitely one of my favorites. Parasite Eve is the perfect hybrid of RPG and survival horror mechanics. You control a police officer named Aya Brea as she fights mutated creatures throughout New York City. As you explore, you'll encounter monsters on the map, and will be able to walk around, dodging enemy attacks until your ATB gauge fills, and are able to act. You can choose to fire your weapon, use an item, or cast one of a few magic attacks that you acquire as you level up. Shooting your gun takes away ammunition that you can only obtain through chests, dead police officers, or fallen enemies. It's not a long game, and there aren't that many actions to take in battle, but this simplicity and scarcity of resources actually complements the survival horror feel. What makes this an outstanding battle system, for sure, is its equipment fusion system. As you play through the game, you'll pick up or obtain different types of armor and weapons, as well as items called tools. At the police station, using a tool, you can take one of your weapons and upgrade its stats or unique effects by consuming them from another weapon. Every time you level up, you can spend bonus points to upgrade your equipment or base stats. All the upgrades you make to your equipment are infinitely cumulative, and you can carry your best equipment over to sequential playthroughs, allowing you to make any obtainable weapon or armor the best available in the game with max stats. I find it wildly satisfying to get stronger and stronger due to the continued efforts I put in, and testing that strength against the game's extra dungeon and super boss. Honestly, I'd recommend this battle system to any JRPG fan. It's just so much fun despite its simplicity. So those are my personal favorite RPG battle systems. I discussed them to hopefully help any fellow RPG lovers pick out something they haven't played yet, or relish in the nostalgia of beloved titles from our gaming history. As such, I welcome you all to do the same in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, as I'll be making more like it. Until then, celebrate your fandom.